All right. Thanks so much for joining us. I know there's going to be a few more hopping on, but um, with the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So thanks so much for joining me today. Jake is on his way. He's running a little bit late. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So thank you so much for joining us for the second installment of our non-public virtual professional development. I was trying to think of something fun to talk about, or how to phrase data collection in a fun way, and I'm not sure I was able to do that successfully. However, we're calling this harvesting change. So actually, this is something that's really exciting. If you've looked at the behavior coach referral form at all this year, we have implemented a new requirement where data has to be submitted. So through this is just giving a few different ways in which to collect and submit data. Okay, so just a few things before we begin. If you're not registered in Frontline for Act 48 credits, make sure you do that. Attendance will be taken at the end of this meeting, so make sure you stay for the entirety of it. And this session will be recorded, so we'll have that uploaded on the Padlet, and I'll send a link out to that again whenever we're finished. And then stay until the end to complete a survey, ask questions, and be entered for a prize in December. Okay, we have a couple of objectives for today, and the first one is understanding the importance of data collection in developing successful interventions. Our second objective, learn about common types of data collection, and then using that data to drive decisions. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring up a poll. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So how comfortable do you feel about collecting data to drive instruction for behaviors? I can't see who answers what, so don't feel bad if you put not comfortable at all. I don't know who it is. Okay, so like semi-comfortable. Okay, very comfortable. Okay, good. So there's a couple different responses there. So anyways, data is used. You've used data before. Maybe these are some things you've seen before. Maybe there's something new to you, but we'll talk about the different uses for these types of data collection. So first of all, why? What's the why behind that? In behavior, we always try to figure out the why. So why collect data? First of all, it helps us to identify patterns of behavior. Tracking data allows teachers to identify patterns and trends, which can help with interventions. If we do keep this data, we could tell that maybe a student is having a very difficult time during a certain subject area, maybe before lunchtime, maybe during those transitions, maybe it's with certain teachers or peers. So having that information, collecting that data can be really helpful with putting in some interventions for this student to either teach the skills they need in order to get through that time, or maybe change our environment in order to help that student. Another reason to collect data would be to measure progress. So behavioral data can be used to measure student progress and determine effectiveness of the intervention in place. Now, certainly we're not going to go from a lot of behaviors to no behaviors, but we want to see better behavior before best behavior. And sometimes whenever behavior continues to occur, we're hard on ourselves, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I've been doing this and it's not working. We say measuring progress for about 2 weeks is like a good length of time to collect data to determine if it's being effective or not. That's also good for us because if we're seeing a decrease in the number of times a behavior is occurring, that kind of gives us the oomph to keep on going if we're seeing a decrease in some of those negative behaviors. And then lastly, to improve instruction. So understanding student behavior can help teachers adjust instructional approaches to meet those individual needs. Okay, so step one. First of all, determine the behavior that needs to be tracked and begin to collect that baseline data. So baseline data would be really before we put any interventions in place, we're just going to collect some information so we know where we're starting. We want to know what our starting point is. We cannot track all of the behaviors at one time. So we might see a student has a lot of different behaviors going on. Maybe it's like the out of seat behaviors calling out. Maybe it's, aggression or some like verbal aggression. Pick something so that we can track that. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves. So pick something pick something that we can track. Maybe it would be like the most disruptive behavior or the most dangerous behavior. So for example, we have that out of seat or calling out behaviors. Typically, those are the two types of behaviors that we see, primarily being those disruptive ones in the classroom. And then of course, we have those potentially dangerous behaviors, which could be throwing objects or elopement. Okay. Our first form of data collection is called frequency data collection. You may have seen this before. But what is this? So on the left-hand side, you can see this is really counting and recording the number of times the behavior occurs within a given time frame. If you take a look over, like I guess this little chart that I have, you can see how this is broken down. Maybe it's by day. So you'd have a sheet for Monday, one for Tuesday, one for Wednesday. And this would have the day broken down by subject area. In this case, there are two different behaviors being tracked, calling out and then out of seat or their designated space. All we're doing is taking tally marks. We're just collecting that to see the number of times a behavior is occurring during that time period. These are really good for, or this type of data collection is really good for behaviors that have a start and an end time. So if it's hitting a desk or out of seat or calling out, touching a peer, any of those would be easy to track that frequency, the number of times in which that behavior is occurring. So if we look kind of through the steps here, we're determining that target behavior. If you were with us the last time, you might remember that target or a behavior that we're looking for needs to be observable and measurable. And just to recap a little bit, observable would be a behavior that we can see and we can track. So like we had before, out of seat behavior, calling out, those are behaviors we can all see and collect data on. If I said disruption, that becomes a little bit subjective. So what's disruptive to one teacher may not be disruptive to another. So we want to be very specific with that. And when we are specific, then we can measure that. We can track progress on that. Again, determine the observation period. If you would use a chart like I have on here, or one that would only be during maybe a certain class, or a time period, that would be fine as well. Our third step would be observe and record data. So just tracking data. And sometimes in the middle of the day, we have a lot of things going on, right? So it's like, oh, another thing, super easy. Make those tally marks and it's good. You can even use a Post-it note. Analyze the data. So we'll sit down and say, okay, this really happened. Like the student was calling out maybe 5 times during morning meeting. That's a whole lot. So let's take a peek at this on the next page here. Oh yeah, I also have little I don't know, like clickers. If you have a clicker or something like that, those can also work too. So here's an example. I just created one so that you can kind of take a peek at this. So again, if you have like the subject and the tally occurrence, which would be calling out. So morning meeting was 8 times, math was 4, reading was 2. So we collected the data, we determined the behavior, we collected the data. So based on that data collected, and we're going to say just for this hypothetically, it's over several days, and it appears as though the student is calling out most frequently in the mornings. So we might say maybe the student needs additional attention in the morning. Maybe they need a space to get out energy or a calm time before beginning of the day. And again, these are different for all of our students. So sometimes it's a trial and error. So we want to try this for a couple of weeks to see if the intervention we're choosing is helpful. So once an intervention is attempted, keep collecting that data. We want to determine if I'm so sorry, if the intervention is impacting the behavior. Sometimes we might say like, oh my goodness, this is working. That's great. And other times maybe we're not going to see that working. So we'll just pick something else to try. Okay, now we have that ABC data collection. If you remember from our last session, if you weren't with us, you can go back and take a look at that. It's all in the Padlet, and I will link that at the end of this session as well. But our ABC data collection, so what is it? We remember it is a way to track data and help determine the ABCs, our antecedent, so what happens immediately before the behavior, so remember that observable and measurable behavior, and then the consequence, so anything that happens after that behavior. This is really good for determining potential triggers and functions to the behavior. And if you remember, function is the why behind it, and we really want to try to figure that out. So again, we'll determine the target behavior of concern, which again would be observable and measurable. We would collect, observe and record the data on a sheet. That looks like this. We do have a few items we'll put on the Padlet for you. There's one that's kind of open-ended like this. There's other ones where you could really just check some boxes, which makes it a little bit easier, especially in the middle of a busy day. We would then analyze the data to determine patterns of behavior. and develop interventions. Here's an example created. So our antecedent, the student will be given a verbal instruction to begin an activity. Then the behavior is out of seat. The consequence, the student is provided with a verbal reprimand to sit down. So if we're collecting this, and we'll say we'll do this over maybe a 2-week period, after collecting data over several occasions, we find the student gets out of his seat when a task he finds challenging is presented to them. So a reprimand has not been helpful to increase participation, but maybe decreased his willingness to participate. So we talked about consequences being like a positive punishment. So we're adding something to this. We're teaching him how to verbalize his needs, ask for help, or provide support in those specific areas. So we're figuring out the why behind it. He's trying to escape a difficult task. So what are we going to do to help him? Either teach him to verbalize his need there, so that the task may not be as challenging for him. Here we go. And we're talking about those whys behind behavior. We're looking at what interventions can we put in place based on that function. So, and if you remember again from before, so we're building a little bit on what we did the last time. We talked about behavior being a form of communication. Students are trying to tell us that they need something, they're trying to gain something, or they're trying to avoid or escape something. So if you take a look at this very cute, colorful freebie that I got on TPT, you can see over here that they created this cute visual, so we can see some of those things a student may be trying to gain, maybe some ways that we could intervene, providing some visual supports, differential reinforcement. We'll maybe talk about that at a different one. Providing some social stories, giving choice to students. That's really important. It gives them that, we call it the illusion of control. So many things are out of their control in the day. Let's give them a couple of choices. It would still be within the realm of what we would find to be acceptable, but they get some choice in it. Do you want to write with a pen, or do you want to write on the whiteboard? Do you want to do your math work at your seat or on the beanbag? Our goal would be to get the work done or to have them compliant. So just providing some choices. And I know that requires some flexibility on our parts too. Planned ignoring or functional communication training. And you'll see that one in all 3 of those different categories there. So important, having the students communicate what their needs are. Again, it could be looking for tangibles, some sort of, like we could provide some reinforcement to them regardless of behavior, providing, again, those visual supports, choice, those first then, if a student is trying to gain something or if they're trying to escape. Some behavioral momentum we could put in place. Really, that would be putting something easier in place before we require something more difficult of them. Arrange the environment. Again, that functional communication, verbalizing what their needs are. Extinction, we may see some of the behaviors increase before they decrease. So don't give up. If you put something in place and you're like, this is making it worse, don't worry about it. Keep on going. We need 2 weeks and you can do it. But really, whatever, we really have to teach them that we're going to hold firm to what we to what we're saying. I was actually just talking with the teacher about this today, actually, with a student, and I said, be firm on your demand when you're giving that to them. I said, because if previously they threw themselves on the floor and you said, it's fine, I'll take you out for a break, that's reinforcing the behavior because they didn't want to do it anyways. So hold your demand. The behavior might increase where they're no longer pounding and yelling, and now they're on the floor and you're like, oh man, this isn't working. Keep trying. We're going to see that behavior, like I said, increase possibly before it decreases again. Frequent reinforcement, and then manipulating setting events. So there's lots of different things, but if you need some help, you can let me know. I'll help you. All right. Hope you're still with me here. All right. Duration data collection. So what is this? So duration is, it's really tracking the length of time a particular behavior occurs. This could be something good to collect if it's a behavior that's happening too fast. If you have a student who's like chattering their teeth, or they're having a tantrum, or if it's a transition, or if they're out of their seat and you're saying, this is a really long time this is happening, duration data is a great thing to collect so that you can determine the amount of time that behavior is occurring. So again, the steps for this: defining the target behavior, again, needs to be observable and measurable. Determine the observation period, so the total length of time observed, either 1 hour, 1 school day, a couple class periods, whatever that would be. Determine or prepare to measure. So with this, you need to have a stopwatch, a timer, something that you can have a reliable source of tracking time. Sometimes those clocks that we have in the classroom are not as accurate. It can be a little more subjective. So just have an accurate recording. Record the start and end times, and then calculate duration. We're going to take a peek at this. Okay, here's an example. It looks like a lot, but it's not. Don't worry. All right, so we have our activity, start time, end time, duration, any notes. Okay, so our morning work, we can see, let's see, what is this? A whining behavior, okay? So anybody have any whiners? I know it's like, oh golly. But we have, so maybe morning work begins at 9:02, ends at 9:06. We know the duration is 4 minutes. And the notes would be, there was a demand in place. They were required to do something during morning work, maybe something they didn't prefer. Then math time, 9:37 to 9:40. So that was 3 minutes. And again, a note, there was a demand in place. Maybe during an activity, the break, 10:15 to 10:17, it was 2 minutes. Verbal warning of 2 minutes left. So they were able to provide that verbal warning for them, maybe as like an antecedent control. But we can see through the data collection that the average duration of whining behavior is about 3 minutes long. So 3 minutes, not too bad. But whenever we add this up throughout the whole school day, that would be, what is it, not 9 minutes within this, within a little over an hour. So really, that's a lot of time, really. So we could actually come up with a percentage for that too, the amount of time they're engaging in that type of behavior. So what can we do as a result of this? We know that there are demands put in place, and it's causing maybe some of that behavior. We could try a few interventions, maybe working on coping skills when presented with those non-preferred tasks or demands. Provide heavy reinforcement when whining decreases. So we want to make sure to reinforce that child. Maybe we are coupling their our praise with them. Hey, great job getting started on that, like like a responsible third grader, high five, whatever that is. But we'd be teaching that behavior and then heavily reinforcing whenever they perform the desired behavior. Okay, we're going to kind of sum this all up in a little package here. So data collection. So again, baseline data is collected before interventions are put into place. So we want to make sure we have this. It helps us to see our growth with the student. We want to see if the interventions we're putting in place are helpful. We want to do this for at least 3 to 5 observational periods across settings. And then if you have someone else working in your classroom, or if you have somebody like an aide or someone in your room, make sure you are communicating effective, or I guess the consistent data collection processes if you're having somebody else do this, just so that everyone's on the same page with that. So I would say make sure just communicate that. And then analyzing. So upon completing that baseline data collection, we can notice trends. So maybe it's the location or the time of day. We could use those ABCs. And then based on that, we can determine the potential function of the behavior, that why behind the behavior, what intervention we're going to use. So for this student right here, I just created this so we can see this in a few different ways. To see which form of data collection would be best. So here's our little scenario. Little Susie is a 7-year-old second grade student. She demonstrates disruptive behaviors in the form of calling out, and she calls out throughout the school day regardless of the class. So we know this behavior is occurring through the school day. Maybe you're thinking, Amanda, I have Susie in my class. I think you've been in here and I haven't. So it's very common. So anyways, if we look at this frequency data collection, we can see right here in the form of calling out during morning meeting, Susie's calling out, what is that, 8 times, I think, up here during morning meeting. In math, 4 times. So we can see in this frequency, easy. We can collect that data. We can take those tallies, easy peasy. With the ABC data collection, our antecedent, she's given a verbal instruction to begin an activity, the behavior she's calling out during the activity, and then a consequence, she's provided with a verbal reprimand and was reminded to raise a quiet hand. So we're providing her with attention in this case. And then duration data collection. I don't know if I would say this would be the best form to use, but we could say if this is the case, Susie's calling out for 4 minutes during morning work and then 3 minutes during math when those demands are put in place. But those are I just wanted to show you the ways in which we could collect data with one scenario using any of those three. For this one, I would probably say, I don't know, the frequency or the ABCs would probably be the best for that situation. Now graphing. Okay, don't be intimidated by this. This is kind of fun. So when we're measuring behavior, if we're taking a look at this graph, we can, I don't know about you, but I'm visual. Like I like to see all the things. So if we're looking at taking this data, we have right here frequency of disruptions. Okay, so we know disruption is a very subjective term. So maybe we could say whatever the disruptive behavior would be for this student, like calling out behavior. We're collecting information. So on day 1, 2, and 3, down here at the bottom, we can see, okay, our baseline. On day 1, they called out 7 times. On day 2, it was 6 times. On day 3, it was 7 times again. Okay. So we are adding in, I'm pretty sure at the bottom that you can't see, it says, oh, no, it's right here. Hello, praise. I knew it was there somewhere. So we're just adding in praise. That's pretty easy. It's easy to point out. I feel like maybe it's just me, like whenever something's going wrong, but sometimes I forget to point out those things that are going right. So making sure to just even the students on our radar, I'm gonna say, you know what, I have a goal for myself. I'm going to praise Susie. I'm going to praise Susie at least 6 times today. And we know that our praise, we want to have that in like a 4 or 5 to 1 ratio. So praises to maybe reprimands or like a negative comment. So, and that can be a lot. So just by adding in praise, we know on day 4, wow, that was down to 4 disruptions, 4 times calling out. On day 5, we were at 5. On day 6, 4. Day 7, 3. So we're seeing a bit of a decrease. We're probably not going to have 0 times this child is calling out, but we're seeing a decrease in that inappropriate behavior, that undesired behavior. And sometimes looking at this data makes us, like I said, makes us feel better. Like, okay, I am making a difference. This is making some progress. So again, it kind of gives us that oomph to keep going. So in conclusion here, determine the behavior of concern, collect data 3 to 5 days to get a baseline, try to determine a potential function like that why behind behavior. They're trying to gain something or they're trying to avoid something, and then choose an intervention to increase desired behavior. We will also have on the Padlet a link to that that TPT cute little function behavior chart for you too. Collect data for 2 weeks with the intervention in place, and let's determine if there's a change in the behavior, and then use a visual to represent changes with those interventions. Again, like I said, those visuals can be really helpful for us, but also for our students so that they can see their progress too, and we can really, congratulate them on a job well done. So that's just another point of praise for our students. So, oh my gosh, look at this. We're ahead of schedule, you guys. So this is exciting. Let me see. I have a link. I'm going to put a link in here for you. Hang on. I've got to find it. Okay, I have a few links for you. So there's a survey code there, but I also have, I have to find myself again. Okay, so there's a survey code, but I'm going to put it in the chat. Okay, so there's a survey code for you. So make sure you can scan it. You can enter, you can just click on that link I just shared with you for the survey. But if you wouldn't mind doing that, we really appreciate that. That helps us to just kind of customize what we're doing for you. We do have some plans moving forward, for our different sessions just based upon feedback that came back at the end of last year. So we kind of have those suggested in there. However, we will answer any questions you have. I know we got a few the last time and we were able to respond to those. So if you have any specific questions, let us know. We are really glad to be a support for you. And then I have one more thing to share before you leave me here. Our last one here is just a Padlet link. So again, I'll send this out via email to everyone that was registered too, but feel free to share that out. This just has a lot of different information from, it'll have the recordings from our sessions and, lots of different resources. Does anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot of information in a quick period of time, but I think we were pretty good. We got that all done, you guys. No questions? Okay. If you decide you have questions or you think of something, certainly let me know. I'm glad to answer those for you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Amanda.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming, Dawn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.